We're live.
Good evening, everyone. I would like to call the October 24th, 2022 meeting of the University City Council to order. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Clay. Councilmember McMahon.
Here.
Councilmember Hales.
Here.
Councilmember Kusick.
Here.
Councilmember Smotherson.
Here.
Councilmember Klein is excused. Mayor Crowe.
Here. Before we move forward with the agenda, I believe it's appropriate for us to at least take a moment. Today, our community was shocked and saddened by what occurred at the Central Visual and Performing Arts High School. We have a teacher who is not coming home for dinner and a student as well. We have students and staff that are in the hospital. We have students, staff, first responders who will be living with the trauma of what occurred today for many years to come. To the first responders who showed up almost immediately and went right in and did their jobs, they saved many lives. To the teachers and to the staff who escorted the students to safety, they saved many lives as well. This is the 36th school shooting this year that has resulted either in injury or in death. Our children go to school afraid of what may happen. As parents, we wonder what happens to our child as they are at school. We as a community must do better than this. But to everyone for today, I would ask for a moment of silence for those we lost. Thank you. Mr. Clay.
Thank you, Mayor Crowe. I'll be very brief in my remarks, but some of you may know I spent the better part of 16 years working with St. Louis Public Schools as a teacher, as a director, a program director, and as ultimately a deputy superintendent. I was in Central 30 times if I was there once during my time with the district. And so this is very personal, I know, to all of us, but certainly to me. And so, Mayor Crowe, I thank you for your words. And I know we're in the city chambers, but at this moment, we are one region, we are one people. So thank you again, Mayor Crowe.
Thank you. You now have before you the agenda for this evening. I believe there are some amendments that need to be made. Mr. Rose.
Honorable Mayor and council members, I would ask that you pull item number J2 from the consent agenda and make that item number K6 up under the city manager's report. Also, there are changes that I would like City Attorney John Mulligan to mention regarding Bill 9489. Mr. Mulligan.
With respect to the bill number 9489, what you received in your packet has an intersection listed Melrose and Mount Vernon, and then under stops in parentheses blank, and that should read all way. And then also under Stop Street, there should be Wellington and Mount Vernon, and that should also read all way. And then lastly, the second line in section 2 where it states to add the following line item, that should be items. So those changes are being recommended to Bill 9489. And if there is a request to introduce that bill, it would be with those changes unless council indicates that it prefers not to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Those changes can be discussed and made at that time. Is there a motion to amend the agenda as suggested by the city manager? Motion made by Mr. Hale, seconded by Mr. Clay. Is there discussion? Hearing none, a vote on the amendment. Those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. May I now have a motion to approve the agenda as amended? Motion made by Mr. Cusick, seconded by Mr. McMahon. Is there discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. You have before you two proclamations, one for the Tradition of Literacy Excellence Award to Shojun Zhang, and then one to the returning artist Scott Black. The council will be signing those proclamations later this evening, getting those out to all those parties that have requested them. You now have before you the approval of the study session minutes from the Third Ward Revitalization RFP. Is there a motion to approve? Motion made by Mr. Smotherson. Is there a second? Seconded by Mr. Cusick. Is there discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Mr. Hales has abstained. May I have a motion, please, on October the 10th regular meeting minutes? Motion made by Mr. Smotherson, seconded by Mr. McMahon. Is there discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Mr. Cusick.
Thank you, Mayor Crowe. At this time, I would like to nominate Suzanne Greenwald to the Commission on Senior Issues.
Is there a second? Seconded by Mr. Hales. Is there discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. We have no swearing in. To those of you who are in the audience, if you would like to speak this evening, we have two segments of citizen comments, both coming up right now and then later in the meeting. And there are sign-up sheets over by the door that you fill out. You can speak either on agenda items or on non-agenda items. For those folks who did not come this evening, the city clerk has provided the citizen comments to all the members of council that were sent to her in written format. Ms. Reese, are you bringing? We have two requests to speak on non-agenda items. When you come to the microphone, if you would press the button at the bottom, that'll allow us to hear you. And if you will give your name and address, your comments are limited to 5 minutes. First request to speak is Tom Sullivan.
Tom Sullivan, 751 Syracuse. The new Costco is opening up, and I still think it is the worst thing University City has ever done, destroying a large part of the city consisting of many nice neighborhoods and diverse businesses. The residents and business people were all kicked out. It should be remembered that the public was completely shut out of the process and was constantly lied to. This was done for the obvious reason: the project was not supported by University City residents. Of course, the biggest lie was by saying eminent domain would never be used except for public storage. I recently came across an old article from May 1st, 2018. The headline is, "U City will not use eminent domain to make way for new retail apartments." It was just part of all the lying that took place. Don't forget how Terry Crow attacked the clergy group that was promoting a community benefits agreement. Given that it seems the city subsidy for the Costco development is continually increasing, a CBA looks like a good idea. At City Hall meetings, a City Hall groupie was even allowed to turn a lectern around and attack citizens, seemingly with the encouragement of the mayor. This was unprecedented. A city known for tolerance has become completely intolerant. A lot of promises have been made about improving the Third Ward with revenue from the Costco project. It remains to be seen if those promises are kept. University City government again proved to be an embarrassment with another story on You Paid For It. The city was harassing a citizen because her garden was supposedly not in compliance with city regulations. When interviewing City Manager Rose, Elliot Davis looked like he was having a tough time to keep from laughing. He questioned if this was really the biggest issue in University City. What wasn't mentioned is that the gardener's husband is former Councilman Steve Kraft, not a favorite at City Hall. He also happened to be a contributor to the campaign against Proposition F earlier this year. So while a big contributor to pass the tax gets a multi-million-dollar subsidy from the city, someone contributing to the campaign against the tax has a city inspector show up at his home. Just another example of how sleazy University City government has become. Proposition F failed with 58% voting against the proposal. This despite the city illegally spending tens of thousands of dollars on the campaign. You city citizens have caught on. They cannot trust or believe the people in City Hall, especially after all the lying done about the Costco project. Thank you for listening to my comments.
Our next request to speak is Rita Clemens.
Good evening. Good evening. Mr. Smothers and Mr. Clay, Mr. Crow, nice to finally meet and see you all. My name is Rita L. Clemens. I reside at 8012 Canton Avenue. I am here to speak in reference to a dead tree that resides on the easement within University City at my property. A dead limb fell, referencing an incident on May 19th, 2022, May 19th, 2022, in which there have been several notes that stated the tree was supposed to be pruned / and or removed, but it has not. It caused damage to the vehicle. And I believe that your claims advisor, Barkley Beekman, has advised or denied any liability from the city of University City. I spoke with Mr. Kaiser in the forestry department, but as in my email, there's only so much that he can do. I asked him if he would prune the tree or remove the tree to keep from any further damage done to any vehicle. In my email, or an email doesn't have to be submitted. If we have Canton is a thoroughfare. So if there's a fire truck, if there's an ambulance, any vehicle that's traveling on that street, there are tree limbs that go across the street from the north side to the south side. And if there is a good gust of wind, those trees need to have those limbs removed. The tree in question in front of my home has caused a couple of backups within my sewer line, and that is not my tree. I have asked to be compensated for the repair for the damage that has been done to my vehicle. I have pictures on my cellular phone, and I have pictures that have been printed out. I have spoken with Mr. Kaiser a couple of occasions, and this was prior to May 19th, this year of 2022. If and when Mr. Kaiser probably had the staff to remove those dead branches and or the tree, that limb that was dead would not have fallen on my vehicle and caused damage to it. Now, it's not just that tree. There are a few trees within that area. And I know that University City is a tree city, but there are some trees over there that need really, really dire attention because they have fallen, limbs have fallen, and thank God that there weren't any damage to any persons walking down the street. There's a young lady, a lot of people walk their dogs down the street. So that particular tree is dead and it has caused a backup. So I'm asking to present to you a resolution that would repair the damage done to the vehicle. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That concludes our public comment section. We have no public hearings this evening. You have before you the consent agenda with items J1, J3, and J4. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda with the consent agenda? Motion made by Mr. Cusick, seconded by Mr. McMahon. Is there a discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Mr. Rose.
Honorable Mayor and council members, this first item up under the city manager's report asks you to receive a very brief presentation on the Fox News reporting of the Creebling Drive property.
This is an apple. Some people might try to tell you that it's a banana. They might scream banana, banana, banana over and over and over again. They might put banana in all caps. You might even start to believe that this is a banana. But it's not. This is an apple.
Honorable Mayor and council members, CNN produced this commercial. And their point in the commercial was to say to the country, basically at the time, that facts matter. And so the way that the Krebling case was presented recently in the media concerns me from the standpoint that all of the facts were not presented in a way that was easily understood. And so tonight, my intention is really just to put the facts on the record so that everyone understands the sequence of events that occurred. So on September the 22nd, our code enforcement officer was on a routine patrol of the area near and around Krebling. And as a result of that patrol, the code enforcement officer identified a home that had violations. And so on September the 22nd, a notice of violation was sent to that home. Now understand that we send out hundreds of notices each year to residents, and normally none of them are on the news because our process is to gain compliance, it's not to cite. And in that first statement, I never said the code enforcement officer cited a resident, although it was reported that we cited that individual for a garden, which simply is not true. On September the 27th, the resident called for a reinspection of the violations. And so on September the 27th, the inspector went to the home on Krebling to conduct the reinspection and was able to confirm the weeds and grass were abated. An incident occurred at the residence, resulting in her contacting her supervisor for assistance. So on September the 27th, the supervisor went to the address on Krebling, and during the time he was on site, identified tree branches that were in violation. So on September the 28th, a second notice of violations was sent. On a letter dated October the 4th, the resident has requested an additional reinspection for the tree limbs, not a garden, tree limbs that were in violation because they believe they have abated that violation. And today, I authorized the reinspection for the tree branches to proceed as it would with any other of our notices and reinspections that occur. So how something so simple, which was us sending out a notice to a resident simply saying, you have some violations there. If you have issues of concern, please give me a call. We're happy to work with you. How that mushroomed into the city has cited a resident for their garden, I have no idea. But I do think it's important that facts be on the record because facts matters. I would respond to any questions that you have.
Any questions from members of council of the city manager?
Just,
Mr. McMahon.
thank you, Mayor Crowe. Just briefly, so that I think that the first notice was mailed out on it was brought back to the office and mailed out on the 23rd. So that was on a Friday. And the call came back on the 27th. That was a Tuesday. So over that weekend, whatever the homeowner did, they did some work in their yard to correct that. We've got photographs of their yard, correct?
That is correct. Can we load the photographs? The photographs demonstrate what the inspector saw and why that inspector believed that a notice was appropriate to send out. Okay, thank you. So these are pictures of the yard as they were at the time of the patrol patrolling the area and what the inspector saw. So the grass, the trees. And this is because they're not tags on the bag. And that's the grass and weeds. So it really was truly just a routine patrol. Again, that we distribute hundreds of these a year. But for some reason, this one seemed to be newsworthy. And if you step back and look at our process, it still went through the process that any other routine notice would go through. They receive it. Most residents bring their property into compliance. We go back out and inspect, and then that case is closed.
Just to follow up, so there was no quote unquote ticket issued. This wasn't into our municipal court system in any way.
Honorable Mayor, Councilmember McMahon, that is correct. There was no ticket that was issued, no citation whatsoever. The only thing that was provided was a letter that says, you have some violations here and we'll work with you to bring them into compliance.
In the past, I've become aware of where some residents have gotten one of those letters that asks for voluntary compliance, and they've called or emailed and contacted us and said, oh, come back out and look at this. What you're looking at might be a native planting. And they've given the city's inspector some education, and that's been worked out. That wasn't involved in this at all, was it?
Honorable Mayor, Councilmember McMahon, that is correct. That was not involved. We did have a prior case where we worked with U City and Bloom to learn more about the native plant species. And so we made some adjustments to our process and how we were enforcing the code to recognize that species of plants that grow here. And in fact, we don't cite those and we don't send notices for those. So we've made those adjustments.
And the presentations that you and we've all saw on the news reporter on social media, none of those had the before pictures. It was always the after picture, or even parts of the lawn or yard that matched up with what you showed us tonight.
Honorable Mayor, Councilmember McMahon, that is accurate. But I would note that the interview that I gave to the reporter, I clearly indicated to him that there was never a citation that was issued, and that the notices that were provided were for weeds and grass, never associated with any flowers, and it was for tree branches. So the reporter, when he presented that information to the public, was aware of what the facts were. That reporter chose not to present the facts.
And I don't mind if we had discussions, if folks in our community saw those pictures and said, your ordinances are too stringent. We think that photograph, that everybody's yard could look like that and we're okay with it. I don't mind if we had discussions about educating us and staff about native plants. I think all those could be discussions that we can be had. I just want to make sure that we're all, on the same page of the process, that we did follow the process. If there was an issue, the homeowners could have brought this forth, left it in the condition it was and said, this isn't a violation and here's why. But they voluntarily complied, it sounds like, and it should have been the end of it. I don't know why we got to where we are with this, but if those are the concerns, that that our code is too stringent on weeds and grass and whatnot, that's, I think, a discussion we can all have. But I don't think in this instance, suggesting that our code enforcement officers doing what they did is fair to them when they're enforcing a code. They believe it was a violation, and there's a process which it all can work out, even if someone were to educate us and say it's not because of X, Y, and Z. And my understanding is that this homeowner would have the ability is quite knowledgeable about plants and would be able to, if that was the issue, they would have been able to easily educate us. So I would hope that they would work with us in that regard, because we're always open to that type of information. So I appreciate the update and letting the community know that these first letters that someone might get, and because now we've got a proactive approach where we have patrols, homeowners might start seeing these letters more often than in years past when there wasn't a proactive approach with patrols, where it was we were waiting for complaints. So homeowners might see more of these letters, and they can know that it's a process. It's voluntary compliance before anything else. So thank you.
Honorable Mayor, Councilmember McMahon, I would like to add that as a part of our process, the homeowner has the opportunity to appeal the notice to the director over that department. They have the opportunity, if they're not happy with that, to appeal to the city manager and to the city council and to the judge. So there are checks and balances within our process to ensure consistency and to ensure that our code enforcement officers are not overzealous.
Mr. Hales.
Thank you, Mayor Crowe. So first, I just want to say, I live in this neighborhood. On the 21st of October, I pulled a report from the city's website from MyGov that shows you the notices and letters and everything over the last 30 days. And it's all in chronological order according to each property. And so I think what the city manager mentioned, there were probably 15 properties in this neighborhood that are on this 18-page list of over 300 properties for those 30 days. Probably 15 that are in this same neighborhood. It's a big neighborhood, I think over 200 and some homes. Not an outrageous amount. But the interesting thing on the report is it notifies what the current existing status is. And the vast majority of these were corrected, including the one we're discussing tonight regarding the tall grass and weeds, which is great. I mean, that's what we want residents to do. I think most of us have probably received a similar letter at one point notifying us that something was out of compliance. And, sometimes that doesn't feel great to know that you're, out of compliance. But the vast majority of people were good citizens and acted very swiftly, including in this case, to address the problem. I didn't receive a call about any notices over the last 30 days. I know Steve hasn't. So I would share that it is a little befuddling. Also in this report, which is quite interesting, some of the comments that I heard were about, well, why are they focusing here? They focus, if you go through this report, on every single ward. We've gotten report or presentations in these meetings about how the department operates, how these proactive code compliance officers have areas that they are responsible for. And so that's terrific. But also in this report, much has been talked about vehicle violations, and to my colleagues in the third ward, they know very well about it. And this report, I went through the whole thing, all 18 pages and 300 some violations. In 30 days, just the last 30 days up to the 21st, there were 30 vehicle related violations, of which all but 2 were in the third ward. So the notion that because, and this has kind of been out there a bit, because this property was cited and other problems exist in other areas is not an indication the city's not doing something. And these reports that are publicly available will show you what's been done just in the last 30 days. And that doesn't count the 30 days before that and before that and before that. So I would just say to all of the people that received the letter in this report that very quickly abated the issue, thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you for the presentation.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Rose. We'll give the city manager a moment to get back up here and give Mike a chance to make adjustments technologically for us. Then we'll move on to item number K2, the markets at Olive.
Honorable Mayor and council members, this next item, item K2, provides you with an update on the Market at Olive project. We have with us tonight the president of Seneca, Larry Chapman, who will be presenting this item. Mr. Chapman.
Almost forgot to hit the button. Thank you very much. Good evening. Again, my name is Larry Chapman. Thanks for letting me be here today. I'm also the manager of U City LLC, which is the developer of the Market at Olive project. And what we want to talk about tonight is there's ultimately going to end up talking about the need for a Chapter 100. But what I wanted to do really quickly is kind of do a brief update for everyone. What you see on the screen here is a artist rendering of the Market at Olive project, as if you're sitting looking to the southwest across Olive, if you're kind of hovering over Woodson, if you will. And I sent you a bunch of information in your packets. I'm sorry for that. I'm going to try and condense it down as best I can this evening and help you with that information. I don't think I can use a pointer on this, but this is simply an artist rendering. It's not an exact depiction of the project. Anyway, what I'd like to do is kind of go through where we are. As I think everybody knows, Costco's opening tomorrow, which is kind of nice, and that'll be a fun day. We think it's going to be a terrific addition to the city, and I think a lot of good things are going to happen. That stockpile of dirt we all talked about for a long time is gone, and we're on our way to working on the south side of the street, and I'll talk more about that in a minute. The very last resident on the north side of Olive is going to be moving out this week finally. And the south side of Olive site work is going to be done in the next 3 or 4 months. That means the roads and all of the site work, utilities, things like that. And I'll talk about some of the buildings in a minute. And then the north side of Olive, now that we'll be able to get in and finish demolition, will begin this year. And then, as you know, based on the packet I sent, we're proposing that Deerbergs go on the south side as the anchor tenant. We call it Anchor J. Another thing I want to talk about tonight is that we're kind of in this together. This is a public-private partnership. Everything we do every day is about competing for deals. We've been very fortunate. A lot of the smaller restaurant users, things like that, have all come chasing after the traffic that Costco brings. But the big anchor stores are really quite challenging to get. The two we're working on, including the one we're talking about tonight, we've been talking to these folks since December of 2021, and it's been quite a back and forth and a lot of challenges to get to the point where we can talk about one of these. And we've really whittled it down to some gaps. And so in that process, there's always going to be trade-offs in a negotiation if you think about it. And that means we need to set priorities. What's the most important versus what's not so important, so we can come to a balanced conclusion. And I will tell you, and we can talk about this and you can have questions, but I think the number one thing that is a win for the city and the developer is paying off the TIF early. The faster we can get the TIF paid off, the faster that we can get to normal taxation, the bigger the win the city's going to have. And I'll show you some numbers that'll lead you to that conclusion later on. So let's talk about, I really wish I could do a pointer somehow, but you can see the Anchor J in the upper left-hand corner. That's the subject of Deerbergs. Along the front, you'll have a number of small retail buildings, everything from a handful of some fast food restaurants to some multi-tenant retail that line the street. Anchor A, of course, is lovely Costco. And then Anchor B, I hope to be able to talk to you about in the not too distant future. We get closer and closer each day. It's an incredibly frustrating process, but we are getting there a little bit. And I think a little bit of luck, knock on wood, by the end of this year, we'll be able to talk about every building in the center. And then we'll be hopefully turning our attention to Mayflower Court, where we hope to get some apartments done, and we can advance that part of the project as well. So why do we want to have a Deerbergs? You know, Deerbergs is a family-owned local business, hugely significant in the community. Second only to Costco, they're going to generate sales and sales taxes, which pay off the TIF in a really meaningful way. And literally compared to every other alternate user we've talked to, they're double what those sales are. And so that's a super meaningful impact. They'll also help us attract other high-end users, and they'll help attract more businesses for the rest of the community. They'll become a great front door. We're going to talk a little bit about this Chapter 100. We're going to talk about personal property taxes, and Deerbergs will literally buy 2 times the personal property of any other retailer. So when we talk about discounting that, it's a non-issue. And the more sales tax we get, again, means we can pay off the TIF sooner. And I'm probably going to say that 100 times because it's so important. And then I think they're the highest and best use for this location, but they're also going to buy and own the store, which is a long-term commitment. Most of our people in the center will be tenants and leases, and you never know what they'll do after 5 or 10 years comes up and roll over. This is a long-term commitment. This is the site plan that we're looking at now. As you can see, we put a very large building onto this site. We're maximizing its potential. And one of the things we've asked them to do, and they're going to agree to do, is to keep 2 retail uses out front. That again will help us with the sales tax, which I can't tell you how important that is. And so how did we get here tonight? And why are we asking for a Chapter 100? So when I think about grocery store users, I think about super high sales volume, super low margins. And so they've got to generate a lot of sales to cover the low margins, to cover their overhead. And so grocers, in my personal experience, have been hyper focused on their bottom line. And if they charge sales tax to their customers, that doesn't affect them one iota. It helps us a lot, but it doesn't affect them one iota. But when it comes to things like real estate taxes, personal property taxes, or the sales tax they pay on their construction materials, it is a big deal to them because all of that does affect their bottom line. And we've been literally talking about how to come together on a gap. And this Chapter 100 buries the gap, allows us to go forward. And as you'll see a little later on, it's really, from an economic standpoint, the right thing to do. So why would we agree to it? Well, I think one of the things we have to talk about is, how did we get here? The taxing jurisdictions have already given up all the future real estate taxes. That's already been gobbled up by the TIF. The commercial surcharge, whether you remember it or not, back in 2019, the redevelopment plan contemplated a Chapter 353 redevelopment plan, and that would have eliminated the surcharge. It didn't go forward for whatever reason. Novus didn't perfect it, but it was in the original ordinance that was approved. And when we talk about the personal property taxes, they're asking for a 50% discount. My argument is they're going to buy twice as much personal property anyway. If you give them 50% discount, the remaining 50% is as much as we get from anybody else anyway. So it's like a win that the city's going to get without if we had an alternate user. And so what I've done is I've tried to drill this down into numbers. The packages I gave you all sorts of numbers and all sorts of information. But if you really look at it, let's pretend for a minute that the original TIF didn't exist and all the original redevelopment didn't exist. The personal property tax savings that they're looking at totals about $370,000 or $23,000 a year. And the city will receive $370,000 that it's not getting now. The commercial surcharge is about $33,000 a year, or $530,000 in total. So over the entire cost of the Chapter 100, worst case costs the city $72,000, the schools $520,000, and all districts about $900,000. But here's the flip side of that coin. Deerbergs is going to generate so much in sales that the annual revenue going to pay off the TIF right out of the box will increase $1,364,000 a year, compared to the best second alternative, a little under $1 million, and another likely alternate 725. They're going to be better than anybody else over $500,000 a year. That's $8 million over the 16 years remaining in the TIF. And what that does is it should bring the average age of the TIF down by 1.7 years. Well, if you think about that, the impact of that to all the taxing jurisdictions is $1,441,000 in 1 year, compared to that $700,000 or $800,000 that we would have in terms of a cost. So the total overall cost benefit is, from where I sit and where I think we should all sit together, is U City ends up to the good, even after taking the full cost of the Chapter 100, $131,000, the school districts $954,000, and all tax jurisdictions $1,645,000. That's how much better off with the Deerbergs and a Chapter 100 than they would be if there was no Deerbergs at all, and as if the TIF didn't even exist today. There's also some other implications here. There's tons of intangible benefits to the city and the community. There's tons of intangible benefits to development. There's a similar impact as originally contemplated in the 353, which was part of the original plan. Even at 50% personal property tax savings, they're going to generate that much, which is equal to any alternate we can think of. Even if the personal property tax and surcharges a cost, it's outweighed by the new revenues. And all things considered, Deerbergs with a Chapter 100 is a huge net benefit to all of us. So what we're doing is securing large anchors is a challenging requirement, and this helps us get it done. The focus should be on the best in class, most impactful retailers. Trade-offs or the give and take should be a net benefit, which this has. Deerbergs provides the greatest chance to pay the TIF off early, and the early payoff is a win for the city, for the schools, and the developer. We need to find a way to go full speed ahead on this, because if we do, we'll be able to have Deerbergs opening a store in less than 2 years if we put our foot to the metal, and we'll get them into the TIF bond refinancing next spring, which is a critical component to what we need to do. I think the next steps are to find a way to press this forward full speed ahead, and I'll answer any questions you have about this or any other part of the development that you'd like me to address.
Are there questions from members of council for Mr. Chapman? Mr. Clay.
Thank you, Mayor Crowe. Thank you for your presentation, Mr. Chapman. Could you or perhaps someone on the city's team, just for those who may be viewing this, a Chapter 100, just high level, what is it?
So a Chapter 100 is a plan by which the city buys the real estate, although not really. So they own it and they're not charged any taxes for it. They lease it back to the owner of the property, in this case, Deerberg, so that they just a tax avoidance mechanism until the Chapter 100 is over and it goes away. So it's like tax abatement, but we've already abated the taxes through the TIF. If you think about it, it's no additional abatement. It's just keeping the taxes from going any higher than they already are. The baseline taxes is what it amounts to.
And in that structure, the city owns it, so there's the benefit of not having the sales tax associated with purchases.
Correct.
Which the things that they would need to purchase for this project don't reside in University City.
Well, that's correct. What happens is that the only thing they save sales tax on is construction materials. Construction materials are taxed where the contractor who sells the materials is located. So if they're not located in University City, they're not going to be taxed here. However, University City is a pool city, so it doesn't get a tax anyway. It goes to the county. So the impact locally is zero when it comes to construction material sales tax.
Okay. The other point is not specifically about this. Two other quick questions. In terms of minority participation, I know that's something that this council has put forward as a goal.
Right.
Can you talk a little bit about that process?
Yeah, so there's two things going on. Remember for a minute that we inherited where we were from Novus. So the phase one, I've gotten those reports and they're submitted to the city regularly. And I'll tell you that I think they hit about 12 or 13% of a 25% goal. Now that we're in phase two, we're monitoring it differently. We're getting different, not only contractors, but we're focusing on the workforce aspect of it, which wasn't really focused on in phase one. And you'll see some reporting that'll come in and we'll get much closer to the 25% goals that we set. I don't have the report. I look for it. We haven't started sending those in on phase two because we're just too early in that process.
Okay. And finally, with Mayflower Court, these folks have been in a limbo. I think they might even call it a purgatory for,
I understand.
I think in some cases 7 years now, 6, 7 years.
Yes.
And so for them to the degree that we can move things along in that process for them,
So,
I think certainly
Can I explain where we are? So let me do that. So we took over the project in November of 2021. You may recall, maybe you don't, but that's when we took over. And I met with all of them as much as I could back then. And I told them it would be a while. We have to get some things cleaned up. We'll come back to you. I thought I might get there by July or August. I'm there now. I've sent them letters on 2 occasions in the last 30 days. The last one actually included an offer for each of their properties. And we're starting to set up meetings individually and in groups on evenings and on weekends. So we should have that wrapped up by the end of the year. If they're all willing sellers, we'll be fine. If they're not, we won't. But we expedited that process. And if you talk to any one of them and they haven't gotten a letter with an offer, then I need to know about that because something's wrong. We hand delivered them and mailed them.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Smotherson.
Thank you, Mayor Crowe. Just a couple of quick questions, Mr. Chapman. And then first of all, what I want to say is that I want to commend you on the type of retailers and businesses that you are after and obtaining. And I think that that's absolutely great. So I appreciate that in references to development. But the question that I do want to ask in reference to the Deerbergs and understanding that whole complex on the south side, is all of the construction dependent on how fast we move with Deerbergs, or is there anything in between that 2-year period that is going to be possibly built and opened?
Oh, everything will be open except the Deerbergs. It just takes a while for them to go through the process. So let's go back. There's 4 buildings between the Deerberg site and McKnight.
Right.
I can go back to that if I know how to go backwards on this thing. Hold on. There you go. See the building that's N,
Yes.
I, O, and G. So N, the permits I think are going to be picked up on Thursday. Where's Mr. Thursday, right? So those should be under construction.
Okay.
Right behind that will be building O. The one on G on the bottom, that's Raising Cane's. I can't talk about that because they're fully signed up and I'm allowed to talk about it.
Okay.
And then the other one should be under construction this spring as well. So those should all be open next spring or summer.
Okay.
Directly across the street, E and F, those are in the process now and they should be open in fall, depending on how quickly we can do construction. And then it would be followed by the Deerberg site if we're able to get that done here. And then hopefully Anchor B.
Got you. All right. Thank you, sir.
Other questions? Larry, I think no further questions from us.
We're here whenever you need us. I know Mr. Rose knows how to get us, so call anytime. We'll show up.
Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you all. Have a good evening.
Honorable Mayor and council members, this
On the item. I apologize. We
I'm
do have
sorry.
speakers on the item. Am I correct, Patrick? You want to speak on the, yeah, please come forward and speak on this item.
My name is Patrick Fox. I live at 1309 Purdue. I'm speaking today about this proposal for tax abatement and many other considerations as a resident of University City. And while I am very pleased that we're seeing development, and I'm very, very adamant supporter of Costco, I'm going to be there when they open tomorrow morning. I'm a little bit concerned about being so generous with considerations to people who are planning on developing. I see the potential for that area, and I know other people do as well. And while there may not be somebody other than this lined up at the moment, I spoke to the Costco people today. They expect 10,000 people to visit that store tomorrow. There's going to be an enormous amount of traffic, and it is going to take time for the buzz to build within the community and for interest to be generated. So I urge some caution there. And as a property taxpayer in University City, I'm really concerned that there is even an idea to float to consider property tax considerations. I pay my fair share. Dearborg's is a company that is very wealthy. They own a bank, and I think they have the means by which to do things. And I think that they should pay their fair share. Now, I'm not saying don't give them some considerations, but this seems to be an extremely generous one. And to the point about whether or not there should be sales tax exemption for purchases for developing the property, I think, unless I am mistaken, if they happen to purchase things in a pool city, we are foregoing our proportional share of those construction materials that otherwise would have been costs, that would have been charged. So I have some concerns about the underlying assumptions within this, and that is one of them. But I just urge you to proceed cautiously on this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I believe that's the only person who wants to speak on this agenda item. The other two speakers are for non-agenda items, I understand. Okay, Mr. Rose.
Honorable Mayor and council members, this next item, item K3, is a conditional use permit, CUP 22-09, Market at Olive, Phase 2, Lot 9. And I have with me tonight, Dr. Wagner, who will present this item. Dr. Wagner? And in fact, if you could also just remain for the next item as well.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. CUP 22-09 is for Lot 9 of the Market at Olive Phase 2 development on the south side. If you can envision where McKnight and Olive intersect, it's that corner right there. Lot 9 is as shown on the drawing. Included with the staff report is a four-store building, and they're just decreasing the parking spaces from 93 to 83 spaces, and that's the entirety of the CUP. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Are there questions of Dr. Wagner? Is my understanding this came before the Plan Commission and was then moved forward to us?
Yes, sir, it did.
Is there a motion to approve? Motion made by Mr. Clay, seconded by Mr. Smotherson. Is there discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Mr. Rose.
Honorable Mayor and council members, this next item, item K4, is a conditional use permit, CUP 22-10, Market at Olive, Phase 2, Lot 10. Dr. Wagner, would you please present this item?
Thank you, Mr. Rose. Yes, CUP 22-010 is also in Phase 2 of the Market at Olive development, and this one is for Lot 10, which is the very corner of McKnight and Olive Road. The restaurant there would like to have more drive-through service, as you can see on the site plan. They would like to decrease the number of parking spaces from 47 to 41 spaces.
Are there questions of Dr. Wagner? Mr. Smotherson.
Thank you, Mayor Crowe. Dr. Wagner, just a very quick question. So you did state that, and we just found out that is going to be Canes.
Correct.
Canes is expecting to have that kind of the number of people, because they're looking like, I mean, they have a 2-line queuing. Is that, and they're expecting that? Because I have not seen 2 lines for Canes at all at any store that I've been at.
As near as I can tell, and I will defer to Mr. David Hutkin behind me, and he's nodding in agreement. So actually, Kane's went through, I've several phone calls from them over the past few months about their site plan, and this is what they came up with. So yes, it's more of a driver-oriented business these days. Restaurants
Okay.
are, so.
And the last part of this is at that second line. So are they going to have a cashier that is standing outside, or how does that work for that second line that's not driving up next to the store, if you understand what I'm saying?
Yes, I'll have to, when they come in with the actual site plan, that's one of the things we'll be checking on. But
Okay, because that's another
Very
question
similar.
that's going to be on the other side.
yeah,
too.
very similar to the one Chick-fil-A on the north side.
That's
They,
right.
and when I've been there before with my son, you can pay with a card and move
They
on.
have
with things.
somebody standing outside. Is that what they're doing?
I'm
Okay.
assuming
And
they will.
Kane's
That's one of the
expecting-
things I'm going to check on as well. I wondered the same thing.
Thank you, sir.
Mhm.
I think my colleague knows his subject matter on that one. I think so. Is there any other questions of Dr. Wagner on this one? Is there a motion to approve? Motion made by Mr. Smotherson. Is there a second? Seconded by Mr. Clay. Is there discussion? Those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. For those of you in the audience, just so you know, when Quick Trip came up, Mr. Hales and Mr. Smotherson both were very knowledgeable about their business as well. Just Mr. Rose.
Honorable Mayor and council members, this next item asks that you consider approval of participation and reimbursement program for project funding from Operations, Maintenance, and Construction Improvement, OMCI taxing sub-districts. This is a program that is administered by the Metropolitan Sewer District. The program is to leverage funds from Metropolitan Sewer District, OMCI taxing sub-districts of the University City branch of River des Peres and Deer Creek.
And
Dr. Wagner, any?
I don't
additional-
know. The numbers
on the slide?
are identical from last year, actually. So both forms, I asked Mr. Rose to sign earlier in anticipation of your approval, and I will email them off later on this evening or tomorrow morning to MSD.
Is there a motion? Motion made by Mr. McMahon to approve item number K5. Is there a second? Seconded by Mr. Cusick. Is there a discussion? Mr. Cusick.
Thank you, Mayor Crowe. Mr. Rose or Dr. Wagner have these potential funds from this program, have they been allocated? And if so, to what? And if not, what is your plans to do with these funds?
Honorable Mayor and Councilmember Cusick, the intention is to use as much of these funds as possible as the match for the home buyout program that we have submitted to the State Emergency Management Agency, who's administering Federal Emergency Management Agency funds. So this would cover a portion of the 25% match that is required.
Okay, and just a follow-up question, if I could, please, could you define portion?
Honorable Mayor and Councilmember Cusick, the way that the grant process works through SEMA is that you submit in our case, initially it was 24 homes. I believe we're modifying that list a bit, so it may end up being 30, 32, something like that. But whatever is approved by SEMA and FEMA, we must provide a 25% match. So SEMA and FEMA will pay, let's say that you have a home that costs $100, they will pay, or the buyout that would cost $100, they will pay $75 for that home, and the city must come up with the additional $25.
Thank you. And I guess I missed when I asked to explain portion, I meant how much of the OMCI funds would be used towards the buyouts? Do you know that yet? Or will all of this be used for that? Or are there other projects that we might use those funds for?
Honorable Mayor and Councilmember Cusick, I believe that certainly I intend to recommend as much of these funds as possible be used for the buyout program. We don't know today if there are limitations on the Deer Creek funds. That's something we'll need to work with MSD on to try to get an answer for you on that. And we will have that answer prior to this being brought back to council, hopefully with the approval from the State Emergency Management Agency of the buyout program that we submitted to them.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? You have a motion and a second before you. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Mr. Rose.
Honorable Mayor and council members, this next item up under the city manager's report, item K6, asks that you consider approval of a contract with Central County Dispatch for fire EMS dispatching services. I am recommending the approval of the contract and authorization to sign it for a 5-year term. I believe that we have with us Chief Henson, who can provide you with some overview of what's included in the proposed agreement. Chief Henson?
Good evening, and thank you for your time. I've also got with me Jason Nettles, who's the Executive Director of Central County. He's not here for a sales pitch. He's here to just answer any questions pertaining to the technology and such. All right. I mean, is there any questions through the study session and such? I'm not sure what you need to know.
Mr. Clay.
Thank you, Mayor Crowe. Thank you, Chief Henson. So in my understanding of this, there are two elements to it. There is the enhanced staffing element that has been a challenge with our dispatch. It's not immune to the challenges that are nationwide as it relates to staffing. So there's been turnover within our dispatching. So this relationship would allow for enhanced staffing, build capacity through central dispatch. The other component would be potentially access to different technology, and I don't want to get too far out of my element here, but would afford access to different kinds of dispatching technology that's currently not available to us.
That is correct.
Correct?
You are correct.
Okay. So the staffing, I certainly understand. I see that in my own work, understanding the challenges of turnover within the dispatch. So I get that. The technology part is do we have the capability of changing our technology, our dispatch technology internally? I'm not sure if I'm asking the question the right way, but hopefully you get where I'm trying to go.
Yes, sir. The current dispatching equipment is run by the police department. I believe it's 20 years old without an upgrade. It's all information right now. Dispatchers take a call. They look it up either in a book or on the screen. They have a backup book that shows what we have going or what we need for that call. They go to the screen, they find out who needs to go. They send the University City units and say it's a fire and we're going to have 3 mutual aid companies coming in. They call, they look at the list and see who is on that list. They call the respective dispatchers that dispatch them and to see if they're available. If they're not available, they look down to the next truck on the list, call that respective dispatch agency as it says, is this truck available, until they find a truck to come and assist us. At that time, the trucks are dispatched. With this enhanced system, it's all kept track of in the computer. It knows which units are in service and which are out of service. So if we were on that system, when we got the call for a house fire and they push the button, it would say these units respond to U City. If there's units on that or they're not available, the computer automatically already knows that and fills in for them trucks, and they're dispatched simultaneously when we are dispatched to that call. So the immediate dispatch that we get, our mutual aid units also get.
Okay.
And vice versa.
Okay. So that helps. So that's the fire department. So in that scenario, are the police still on the other system?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. This is strictly police or I'm sorry, fire and EMS.
Okay.
It's a specialty system for that. There is systems out there that do all the above. However, it's a lot more than what we are looking at paying for this.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
I would say along with that, it also has a geo system. So say Olivet goes to Clayton on a fire and they're coming back through U City and we get a fire or even an EMS call. If they're closer than we are, not only will we get dispatched, but it'll pull that truck automatically to that scene because they are the closest unit. The concept of the whole thing overall is to decrease response times and increase viability of life and property.
My apologies. And is the contract is 5 years? Is it renewable annually or is it just five? Is it a 5-year contract?
Yeah, no, go ahead.
Good evening, Jason Nettles. I'm the Executive Director at Central County 911. So our initial contract is for 5 years and we're willing to roll that over at the rate that we're at the 5-year period. I'm happy to answer any other questions as well. I can provide some background on who all we provide service for and so forth. If there's any lack of understanding with council, I'm happy to do that if you need that.
Anyone else? Mr. Hales.
Thank you. My question is probably for both of you. There is a video that we received today by email that kind of walks us through the process if somebody has a medical or fire emergency of handing the call over and for the benefit of everyone here and watching, could you kind of walk us through that process and how that might improve the level of service?
Yeah. So what happens when a call is received on 911? Currently at U City, if you're within the boundaries of U City, the call goes to the U City Police Department and they process the call. What will happen in the future is U City will still be the primary dispatch center that receives the call. And that's the way it is throughout St. Louis County. Law enforcement answers the primary call, the initial call. As soon as the person says, I need an ambulance, I need the fire department or whatever, the dispatch at the police department will transfer it. Our dispatcher will pick up and we'll immediately start processing that, utilizing national standards through emergency medical dispatch program. And that's probably the video that you were referring to. So within usually 15-20 seconds, we've got basic information, can get a CAD call entered, and then a dispatcher somewhere within the center is dispatching units to the call. We strive towards using national standards, NFPA and some of the other organizations on call processing times and unit dispatch times. And they're pretty robust. So we're pretty confident that's one of the significant performance indicators that we'll be able to improve on based on. It's not something that just University City is challenged with. It's municipal police departments all over the country that are very similar to what the setup is here in University City. So
thank you. And then just a follow-up question. So I think a lot of our neighbors, immediate neighbors, are with East Central, right? And so East Central has done essentially the same thing, separated police and fire, and they have EMD dispatchers.
yeah, let me just do a quick overview. So our organization, Central County Emergency 911, provides service for about 80% of the fire and ambulance departments and districts in St. Louis County. Other than University City, the only other two that provide any type of fire service are Kirkwood, and they provide service for 3 departments. And then East Central Dispatch provides service for those 7 departments, Brentwood and so forth, Clayton, that section across there. We provide service for all 17 North County departments and all around to South County down to the Jefferson County line and actually Merrimack Ambulance District over into Franklin County, we provide service for as well. Speaking of the technology just a minute ago, it's location-based dispatch. So part of what's included in our contract that might not have been crystal clear is some of the capital infrastructure that we provide as part of our contract. So in each of the primary apparatus, we'll have a mobile CAD unit that's valued at about $2,500 a piece. We'll have mounting equipment in there. There'll be a mobile router with AVL or automated vehicle location technology with a FirstNet air card in it. That's how we literally can see where all the apparatus are live, anywhere they are within cell phone service, essentially. So that's what Chief Henson was mentioning a minute ago about closest units. So our dispatchers can see that and able to reroute units so that the closest units do get dispatched to the call. And also upgrades, that's another thing that we do throughout the day on a daily basis. If a higher acuity call comes in, something that has more of a life threat, we have the ability to see that there's somebody else closer to that or divert units based on whatever the acuity of the call is. So for those higher life threat calls, we're regularly doing that and then filling in for a unit behind that if they get dispatched to something like a cardiac arrest and they were initially going on a stomach pain or something. We do that throughout the day as well. That's very common.
Thank you. My last question is how many of our sort of immediate neighbors are still operating without emergency medical dispatch for fire and EMS? Is there any municipality kind of around us that is still operating that way?
When you go a little further west and a little further north, there are some more rural areas that do not use any emergency medical
But I
dispatch.
mean, inner ring.
Not within St. Louis County. Yeah, there's all the other dispatch centers, to my knowledge, are using some form of emergency medical dispatch. We happen to use International Academies of Emergency Dispatch, Priority Dispatch. It's again, an international standard that's utilized all over the world.
Okay, thank you.
If you don't mind, to go along with that, talking about the EMD dispatching, when a person collapses and their heart stops, having an EMD dispatcher on the line in 30 seconds is very vital because their chances increase substantially. When a body does not have any circulation for 4.5 minutes, that body becomes non-viable. So when you talk about having an EMD dispatcher who can give directions on how to do CPR and make that body circulate the blood and feed the oxygen to the body, that 4.5 minutes, that takes the non-viability issue out of it. So it's a very vital system, not only for that, but just major bleeds, if somebody cuts an artery, they can tell them how to take care of that until we get there. I hate to use it as an example, but today is a perfect example. Rapid response saves lives.
Any other questions of Mr. Rose or of the chief? Madam Clerk, I believe I need a motion. Have I called for one yet? Do we have a motion to approve? Motion made by Mr. Smotherson. Is there a second? Did I hear a second by Mr. Hales? Is there additional discussion? Hearing none, those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it.
Honorable Mayor and council members, before moving on to the remainder of the agenda, I did want to take a second to recognize Mike Carlin. Mike Carlin is our manager over information technology, and this will be the last meeting for him. And so I wanted to publicly recognize him and tell him how much we appreciate the work that he has done for us and wish him well in his next chapter. So Mike, thank you.
For all of us who lived on Zoom, Mike was kind of the operator for us because he got us through one meeting after the other, after the other, after the other. So as I said to Mike earlier, congratulations, but you will be dearly missed. We appreciate all you've done for our community. Thank you. Let's now move on to unfinished business. You have before you bill number 9487. May we have the second reading?
Bill 9487, an ordinance vacating and surrendering a public walkway between 511 and 519 Westview Drive.
We have the third reading.
Bill 9487, an ordinance vacating and surrendering a public walkway between 511 and 519 Westview Drive.
Is there a motion to approve? Motion made by Mr. McMahon. Is there a second? Seconded by Mr. Hales. Is there discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember McMahon,
Aye.
Councilmember Hales.
Aye.
Councilmember Cusick,
Aye.
Councilmember Clay,
Aye.
Councilmember Smotherson,
Aye.
Mayor Crowe.
Aye. The bill is passed. May we have the second reading of bill number 9488?
Bill 9488, an ordinance approving a final development plan for Phase 2 of the proposed marketed Olive development located at 8630 Olive Boulevard.
The third reading, please.
Bill 9488, an ordinance approving a final development plan for Phase 2 of the proposed marketed Olive development located at 8630 Olive Boulevard.
Is there discussion? Oh, wait, I'm sorry, I apologize. I got to have a motion. I apologize. Motion made by Mr. Smotherson. Is there a second? Seconded by Mr. Clay. Is there discussion? Mr. Smotherson?
Thank you, Mayor Crowe. Very quick question and on this item so that before we approve it, and then since we have the opportunity of speaking with Mr. Chapman, who's here right now, very quick question in that, is there any plans on improving McKnight and or Woodson on the east side of this development? Because there are residents that are concerned about the traffic that's going to be created, and especially on the Woodson side of Olive. Is there any plans for any improvements or widening that? There's also, before you answer that, there's another point that I'd like to actually address with the city, but also specifically with you, Mr. Chapman, in St. Louis County. Is there a way to stop FedEx from using Olive as a route, or having FedEx help in funding maintenance of Woodson? Because again, what you have to understand about U City is that U City in that section of Woodson, before we get to Overland, is residential on that east side. It's not the same thing if you come from Page to FedEx. There is no residential issue, but for U City, there is.
Well, I'll answer the questions as best I can. First of all, on Woodson and McKnight, there is some widening and some lane straightening. And so when you come down, for example, if you're coming down Woodson toward Olive, there'll be a left, a through, and a right-hand turn lane when that's all done. So there'll be 3 lanes there going to the south. There's 1 lane going back, actually 2, if you think about it. And then on the McKnight side, there's just some widenings and straightenings just to make that line up with the traffic signal. But it doesn't go super far to the north or the south, honestly. There is right turn only coming out of the development onto Woodson, so it can't go left. It won't block up traffic, at least as far as we're concerned. I have no idea what you can do about FedEx from here, given that it's in another jurisdiction coming this way, other than, police it heavily and make sure they're always doing what they're supposed to do. I wish I could give you some good advice on that. I'm not sure St. Louis County could do anything either. I don't know. Are they in Overland? Is that the municipality they're in? I mean, they'd be the only one who could really help you because that's where they've been permitted to do business. Sadly, I wish I could do more on that. And then there are some improvements we're going to be doing to Olive west of 170 that MoDOT's asked for that will help some of the traffic mitigation as well. But according to every traffic study we have, all the traffic's going to go to and from Interstate 170 by and large. And so we should contain it pretty much in that area.
So Madam Clerk, we've had the second and the third reading and a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion on bill number 9488? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Hales.
Aye.
Councilmember Cusick,
Aye.
Councilmember Smotherson,
Aye.
Councilmember Clay,
Aye.
Councilmember McMahon,
Aye.
Mayor Crowe.
Aye, the bill has passed. We'll now move forward to new business. For new business, you'll recall we have bill number 9489, which Mr. Mulligan read the changes to. Is there a member who would like to introduce bill number 9489? Mr. Cusick, may we have the first reading?
Bill 9489, an ordinance amending Schedule 7 of the Traffic Code to revise traffic regulations as provided herein.
Thank you very much. We now have bill number 9490. Who would like to introduce? Mr. Smotherson. May we have the first reading?
Bill 9490, an ordinance amending Section 400.0 of the Municipal Code of the City of University City, Missouri, relating to the official zoning map by amending said map so as to change the classification of property known as Lot A and Common Ground 2 of Plat 4 of the Market at Olive Development from PD Planned Development Commercial District, GC General Commercial, and SR Single Family Residential District to PD Planned Development Commercial District, PD-C.
Thank you very much. That ends the new business, council reports and business. Any comments, any reports or business? Hearing none, citizen participation. We have our second set of citizen participation. The first request to speak is Ms. Erin Ginsburg.
Honorable Mayor, council members and city manager, my name is Erin Ginsburg. My address is 430 West Point Court. In the past 2 weeks, UCity TNR volunteers trapped, neutered, vaccinated, and returned 7 cats from 4 municipal sites at no cost to University City taxpayers. Unfortunately, community cat food, water, and shelter continue to spark misunderstandings between our volunteers and code enforcement. UCity's TNR volunteers respectfully request that section 210.130 of our municipal code be amended to add providing food, water, and shelter to the list of permitted acts. Thanks for your service to our community.
Thank you. Our next request to speak is Ms. Bonds.
Good evening, and thank you for hearing what I have to say. My name is Diane Bonds. I live at 8665 Spoon Drive. And I said it was off the agenda, but it's a little bit on about the Mayflower and renters. We don't want renters as things to make problems. It's like pushing away the residents south of McKnight and Mayflower. We don't need renters because you got the district, you got all of Delmore from 170 to Price, building up new renting. You got Dellcrest and Delmore, new apartments. So I don't think that's necessary. I'm totally against that particular part of the redevelopment. My second concern was the tree. I'm piggybacking off of what the young ladies said, and I'm sorry about my voice, I have allergies. The tree in front of my house, I've requested to be removed because the branches do fall. Every hard wind, every rain, I've got 3 dents in my car and several scratches. And the only reason I don't repair them, I'm gonna put the car right back under the same tree. And they do prune, but they only prune lower parts of the tree. So the higher part is the dead part. And that's what's falling every time you get this bad weather. So I am requesting that, that tree be removed. But I thank you for your time, you guys' services.
Thank you very much. That concludes citizen participation. Are there any council comments this evening? I can't say, is it Tim? Mr. Cusick.
Thank you, Mayor Crowe. I would like to just pose one question to the city manager concerning the reparations that are being made throughout University City. What is the status of our wonderful dog park? I have had many dog owners ask me about the dog park, and could we get a quick 15-second update if that's possible?
Honorable Mayor and Councilmember Kusick, with regards to the dog park, similar situation for the Centennial Commons and our Public Works yard. All of that was damaged during the historic flooding. We have taken steps to clean up those areas, initial steps, but the restoration process will require FEMA approval if we want to receive federal dollars for the restoration. So that's where we are at this point. All of the information has been provided to FEMA. So we are just waiting on them to give us the approval to move forward with restoration.
If there are no other council comments, all I would ask folks is that tomorrow Costco does open up. There is a ribbon cutting at 7:45. I believe the gas pumps, I think we're supposed to open today. And so there hopefully will be a nice crowd tomorrow. I think many of us have been involved in this for a really, really, really long time. So we're happy to see it. So with that being said, I hope that I see everyone tomorrow, and I would welcome a motion to go into executive session. Is there a motion? Oh, sorry. So motion going to executive session according to Missouri Revised Statute 610.021, legal actions, causes of action, or litigation involving a public governmental body and any confidential or privileged communications between that governmental body or its representatives or attorneys. Is there such a motion? Motion made by Mr. McMahon, seconded by Mr. Clay. Is there discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Cusick,
Aye.
Councilmember Smotherson, Councilmember Clay, Councilmember McMahon,
Aye.
Councilmember Hales,
Aye.
Mayor Crowe.
Aye. Thank you.